What is up, wrestling fans? Welcome to another episode of the Smark Out Moment Smack Talk podcast. I am your host, as always, Tony Mango, and joining me, as always, are Callum Wiggins
Yes, I'm here.
and Robert DeFelice.
I'm also here.
I am also here, and we are going to be talking about the mailbag, the slightly altered mailbag from what we've been doing over the past bunch of years. This is the Q1 2020 mailbag. What that means is, if you haven't been following the past bunch of podcasts where I've explained this, just a quick breakdown, we are not going to be doing these monthly anymore. There's a couple different reasons why. One of them is that we've been getting a lot of the same questions from a lot of the same people, and we just kind of want to switch things up a little bit. We're hoping that maybe less of a I guess like supply and demand is a good way to put it, like less is more, and more people can participate if it's not just a once a month type of thing, because they can have some more time to kind of think of some questions or something like that. Another reason why is because we want to do more things outside of the mailbag, because the fact that we have so many pay-per-views. Now we got the AEW stuff to factor in. WWE keeps wanting to turn around and have a pay-per-view every 3 weeks, it seems. So we don't really get a chance to do a lot of the other gimmicks and stuff that we would like to be doing. And, we're going to try to just play around with some stuff like that. Another reason why is because we do have the Patreon that I'm trying to build a lot more. And one of the tiers on that is Mailbag Priority, which is kind of, it's sort of a mix between the Pick Your Poison tier, which, I might as well plug the Patreon while we're at it. If you want us to do anything in particular, the Pick Your Poison tier is a way for us to have the time and everything to do those things. So if you're like, I really want you guys to do Superstar Scores, Bam Bam Bigelow, or whatever it is, then when you donate to that tier, then you request that, and we actually end up doing that. That's a steep kind of price, and a different variation of that is on the cheaper side for, I believe it's $20. I don't know entirely off the top of my head, but I'm pretty sure it's 20. For that is if you have a series of mailbag questions that you want us to answer for that month, and this is a month that we're not doing the mailbag, then you get the priority to be able to ask those questions. Then we will do something like that, whether it's on the Darkcast or it's on something on YouTube or elsewhere like that. So it's another way to just kind of boost a little bit of revenue, and I feel like people kind of want a little bit of a change and not having the monthly mailbag as much anymore. So yeah, it's quarterly now, and this is the Q1 mailbag. So we're doing this in January, of course. This is January 29th, and we won't be doing another one of these until around WrestleMania time. And I don't know entirely sure exactly when we're going to do that, because it kind of depends on the way that WWE structures a bunch of different things. If we get, for instance, that there's not too much going on right before WrestleMania, maybe we'll do it right before that. But more than likely, it's going to be the week or so after Mania. And then, of course, that changes around a little bit too if we get like the Superstar Shakeup or something. So basically, the setup I'm giving you guys here is this is the mailbag for now. We're not going to have another one of these until around April. And there's plenty of questions, I'm sure, that you guys would want to know along the way. But then if you want to, in February, you really want to know some answers to some different things, head up to Patreon, Mailbag Priority. Other than that, we're going to answer these questions, and you won't be having a mailbag until April. So keep that in mind. But while we're answering these questions, I want you to chime in with your answers as well. So if you are on the audio-only platforms, the Spotifys, the Stitchers, the iTunes, all that other kind of stuff, head on over to the YouTube channel. That's where you can leave your comments below. And while you're there, you should subscribe to the channel if you haven't done that already. Ring that little bell for the notification alerts. Like the video, because that helps out quite a bit. And then, of course, as I mentioned, drop a comment below. If you are not a part of the whole YouTube thing and you don't want to do that, there's also the page on smarkoutmoment.com where you can leave your comments, because that's, it's got the discuss thing there. So, yeah. Anyway, we're going to just start diving right into these questions here with, let's go with Brendan Borges' questions. This one is, what are your top 3 feuds of the past decade from 2009 to 2020? I tried thinking of this last night, and I couldn't off the top of my head think of any. This is kind of tough. And I'm sure that it's just me being stupid and blanking out on things more than that there weren't any good feuds. But I kind of feel like we need to sort of talk this out, and you guys need to remind me.
Well, this immediately you ask, do we do the Smark Out Moment thing of only talking about WWE, or can we say, Okada, Tanahashi, and like Okada Omega and stuff like that? Because if we're only talking about WWE, then it gets really slim. And one of the first that comes to mind is CM Punk, John Cena.
Yeah, that's usually quite high up there. Like I would hopefully like to extend it out beyond WWE's boundaries. But if you are sticking strictly with WWE, then Punk versus Cena is a good one. I'd say Daniel Bryan versus the Authority is high up there for me.
That was
Okay,
the
yeah,
next one.
that might be one of them for me.
Yeah, I really liked Velveteen Dream versus Aleister Black. I know it was a short feud, but I thought as a storytelling one, it was really good. To be fair, a lot of these are going to come from NXT for me as well.
Right. I think the only unanimous one we'll all have is Gargano Ciampa.
Yeah, that should be up there for me.
On the women's side, Banks Bailey, Lynch Charlotte, some combination of those. I think Miz and Ziggler, maybe. I don't know.
That's a very far stretch you just pulled there.
Well, but like WWE feuds over the last decade haven't really been all that great, so it's gonna be a pretty big stretch.
Well, yeah,
So,
I don't
looking
think
at a
fundamentally.
list right now, and since Brendan had suggested 2009 until 2020, as opposed to 2010 to 2020, that includes Undertaker Michaels. So that becomes then Undertaker, Michaels, and Triple H all lumped together. And even
There's
though
that asterisk again.
Well, because I mean, it's one feud leading into another feud, which incorporates the other guy. Like that's like a 4-year feud of revolving around the Undertaker. And even though I still think that they made a mistake and they shouldn't have gone with Michaels Undertaker, Triple H Undertaker, Triple H Undertaker, I still think it should have been Michaels Undertaker, Michaels Triple H, and then move on and have like Undertaker Barrett along the way, Undertaker Sheamus along the way, that kind of thing. Undertaker Michaels is still something that's very, very interesting, and it was a damn good set of matches, so that's up there. A lot of these other ones, I don't know if I'd really put them on the list. I mean, I really do remember liking Christian versus Randy Orton. I don't know if that would be my top 3 feuds, though. Maybe a top 10.
Shield and Evolution comes to mind, but I think for me that was more just those 2 matches were really fun than anything else.
Got Styles versus Cena. If you want to go a bit more recent.
Beat up John Cena.
And that was fun. That was good for a while. It's difficult just because there isn't really that abundance of really show stealing feuds. I part of me wanting to include like Kofi Kingston versus Daniel Bryan, but it wasn't really about Daniel Bryan. It was just about Kofi. So it's not really a feud. It's just a Kofi story.
What about Cena Rock? Did that do anything for you guys?
Nah, not really.
Nah, not really. Yeah, they were just 2 big matches. I guess it was a feud, but I didn't really. The feud was the match building up to WrestleMania 28. The one at 29 was just a match.
Yeah. I know Tony wants to say Brock versus Goldberg.
That was actually a pretty good feud. For what people probably were expecting it to be, it was actually a lot better than it had any right to be. I wouldn't incorporate. I would have put Owens and Zayn, but then they overdid it.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, that one egregious example is this is the last time they're going to fight each other until 2 weeks from now. That was such bullshit. They could have gotten away with a damn good finish to that feud, and then couple, at least like a year or 2 later, brought it back to the point where it's like, oh my god, we're gonna revisit that. That's so cool. And they ran that into the ground.
That's how I feel about Orton and Cena. Like, if you think about major feuds from that time period, they should be on there, but I saw it too much to the point where it lost its value.
What about Miz versus Bryan?
See, they killed it for me.
So it was good until they actually got in the ring, and then
Yeah.
and then it actually, which is surprising, but they were better when Bryan was retired and couldn't get involved.
It had more potential than what they were able to actually get out of it because they went in the wrong direction. Like, I mean, how many times did we talk about the idea that like this should have been like a WrestleMania feud, or how do you get the most out of this, and what would happen if this could actually turn into something? And then instead, it ended up just going in a wrong direction. So disappointing. Because Miz turning babyface, that threw things off, and Bryan being the heel, like it should never be Bryan the heel in a feud against the Miz. It just doesn't work out all that well.
What about Rusev versus Dolph Ziggler with Lana and Summer Rae?
Jesus.
But John Cena versus Commitment. Anybody?
Nah, I don't think so. If you're going to ask me about like just top 3 feuds and I'm allowed to just stretch beyond WWE, I'm probably going to go Bryan versus The Authority, Okada versus Tanahashi, and the Revival against DIY.
I like the Revival and DIY.
Because I wanted to include a tag team feud in there, and that was probably the best one out of the lot.
I would probably say Gargano Ciampa, and if I'm allowed to go outside of WWE, I would also say Okada Tanahashi, and then because we have that leeway, Michaels Taker.
So let's move on to the other question from Brendan. Here are the superstars that I would like to see break out in 2020. Drew McIntyre and Liv Morgan. Your thoughts? Well, now that we've gotten the Royal Rumble go by, we know that Drew McIntyre is going to have a breakout year because he had a hell of a Royal Rumble. He comes in there, wins the Royal Rumble, he eliminates Brock Lesnar, and he's going to potentially main event WrestleMania and possibly win the WWE Championship for the first time. That's awesome. I think we can all agree that even if that goes south and he doesn't win the title, that Drew McIntyre is still going to have a pretty good 2020. I don't know about Liv Morgan. I know that we've been talking about this lately, and I've been saying that I think that this is going to go south. And I know someone, I'm blanking on who it was. Sorry. I'd love to comment saying for me not to give up on Liv Morgan yet because she's got star written all over her. I still think that it's not her fault that this is going nowhere, but I can't see this being some star launching platform, this Lana feud.
No, I'm kind of hoping Monday was the end of it.
We'll talk about Drew McIntyre. That's pretty much, that's good for you, Brennan, because he's going to be probably a world champion this year. So he's definitely breaking out and getting some well-earned recognition. And say what you will about the Liv Morgan feud, I know you guys hate it. It's just, it's getting numbers and it's getting ratings and it's getting people's attention. And Liv Morgan is probably going to be a made woman out of this. I feel like she is probably the second most. I guess you probably have Becky Lynch at the top, then maybe the Kabuki Warriors, and then it's Liv Morgan after that. In terms of like who's kind of over with the crowd. So I feel
is
like
she over because she's in a bad story? Like, you know how sometimes people are just like, oh, this person deserves so much more, and then you give them more, and then they're like, oh, well, they're overrated as fuck.
Well, what's a bad storyline?
Yes.
Surely a bad storyline is one that doesn't get any attention whatsoever and just like dies a death in both like the ratings or crowd reactions or anything like that. Whereas this is actually getting a good response.
Yeah, but I think even I was coming out of the wedding like, wow, okay, they have something here, and then they dropped this bombshell with oh, Liv and Lana were together, and then did nothing with it. They did not expand upon that. They didn't have them cut promos about their time together. Nothing. It was just Liv was another one that tried to stop the wedding. I'm mad at you for it. We're gonna catfight.
I look at this story as having little substance, lots of fluff that has like distraction elements to it. And once that crap goes away, people are going to completely tune away. Like, I think that this is bad as it is. I don't think it's written well. I don't think that it helps anybody. I think if this ended right now, Rusev looks no better. Other than the one moment that he had looked better than what he had done before this feud was when he was like, "Hi, it's me, Rusev from Rusev Day." That's one line that made me go, "Oh, he's got a little bit more personality." And those stupid t-shirts and stuff like that are kind of funny, but like, I don't buy Rusev being more of a number one contender now than what he was before. And I think that this is now like the fourth bad Bobby Lashley story. Remember like the whole sisters thing with Sami Zayn and all that? So he doesn't look any better. I'm not more likely to think that he can beat Brock Lesnar now. Lana, I think that this is just exposing her bad acting and over the top, like from a different era type of performance. And Liv Morgan, I feel like they saddled her with a gimmick that can go nowhere because it hinges entirely on Lana. Like, she left with the whole Charlotte thing saying she's going to come back and she's going to be more real and all this other kind of stuff. And her impetus to return is fuck Lana. Once the Lana thing ends, then what character is she? Because right now, if you explain to me what is Liv Morgan's character, it's she's mad at Lana. Not, look at like some of the other characters. Randy Orton, he's like a psychopath and he beats people up and takes them out of commission and he's got this like twisted edge to him. Undertaker, he's a dead man and he can, all this other kind of stuff. And Shawn Michaels, he's this like pretty boy with an attitude, and Triple H is this manipulative cerebral assassin and this authority figure and all that. What's Liv Morgan's character? She just doesn't like Lana. And if you strip that story away, a couple weeks from now, a month from now, road to WrestleMania, she's just going to be in the Battle Royal and she's going to be a nothing name in there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No.
Well, okay.
I think she's a favorite to win the Battle Royal.
I think so too, but I don't know.
She'll be in the Battle Royal and she'll win it, and then I think she'll probably be feuding for a women's championship by the roundabout SummerSlam time.
I can agree that I think she'll win the Battle Royal, especially now that, it's pretty much her or Alexa. I don't really know who's around that can win the Battle Royal. But
it kind of depends on, I think that they're not going to plan out the Battle Royal stuff until at least like a week or so before Mania, but
I don't know, it's just a weird story for me. Liv definitely has potential, but I'm not seeing it here because it's a bad story. It's a bad story that has good numbers, Callum.
Well, I guess we're going to see. Obviously, I hope the best for Liv Morgan because I think that this isn't her fault. And Drew McIntyre is on a major, major upswing. So that's cool. Let's move on to guest 5 set of questions here. What do you guys make of the first Pokemon DLC and the controversy surrounding these games? And what he's referring to is that Pokemon Sword and Shield have 2 expansion DLC things going on. It's the Isle of, what's it called? The Isle of
Armor and the Crown Tundra.
Yeah, so those are coming up pretty soon. One of them I think is very soon, if I remember correctly, and the other one's like a couple months after that. And yeah, I mean, so I don't have the games. Rob, you don't have the games, right?
I have Shield.
And Callum, you've got one of them too?
I have Shield as well, yeah.
Huh.
All right.
What do you should get Sword and trade?
I already have a friend for that.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Well, you snooze, you lose, Rob.
Yeah, I'll give you that.
That just sounded like such an awkward, like, I could just picture being like at the playground at recess and just kind of being like, I already got my champ or something like. Uh,
I think the DLC packs look good, you know? I don't understand what he means by the controversy surrounding the games. I know there was a lot of complaints about like it not being graphically up to par, but that's a bullshit complaint if you ask me. I think the games are very good.
well, I mean, there are lots of things that are problematic with the way that they did this when it comes to the Pokédex not being full, the graphics being something that they were like, oh, that's why. And then it was like, well, you didn't really do anything, so you're flat out lying about the whole, we need to redo all the Pokemon. And then, well, we didn't, but we're being lazy. Because by now, it's pretty much confirmed. The reason why the Pokédex is not entirely, fleshed out in this game is twofold. They were being lazy and didn't want to push the date back. So they were working on Town, I think is the name of it. That's where some of the resources went, and they just sort of said, like, well, you know what? We just won't have the whole thing in there. And number two being, when you do have DLC, now you add more Pokemon into the mix, and people want to buy it because now they get more of the Pokemon. And it seems like this might be their strategy going forward. Instead of releasing extra different types of games like Gen whatever remakes or anything, like the Pokemon Yellow and Emerald and Platinum and all the other kind of things like that, now it seems like the DLC route is the way that they're going to go. So I'm kind of two opinions about it. I get it. And as a business decision, I don't think it's necessarily a bad one. But the price tag seems a little high to me.
Well, is it any worse than what they typically do, which is especially what they've done for the last two generations of the game with Sun and Moon, and then releasing a couple of like a year or a year and a half later Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which are
Right.
about 80-90% the same game, but you have to buy a completely different game for it. At least this is a better approach than that.
There's a better method than to spend as much money as what a whole new game would be, but we also don't know how big these DLC things are going to be. And if they end up being big enough that they justify the price, because it's what, $30 a piece, I think?
Yeah.
Or is it $30 for both? That's a big difference then.
Well, typically when it comes to packs are usually grouped into like $25 for everything, $30 for everything. So I don't think it'll be $30 a pack. It's the standard DLC pricing, I think. But I'm also used to that way of gaming now.
Yeah, I think they're around about $30 for the overall expansion pass, which I think gets you both of the DLC. So it's reasonably steep, but it's not the worst thing in the world, and it's definitely preferable to what they would be doing, which is just charging you for a completely new but virtually the same game down the road. And yeah, I think people are just getting upset about it because DLC as a term has just a dirty connotation surrounding it now. So that's why they're probably just more upset about it than anything else.
Well, do you think DLC is a better way to do business than, just constantly repackaging a game? I think DLC has provided much greater growth. I mean, look at how long Grand Theft Auto games are able to stay relevant because they just come out with DLC for the next 5 years and you keep making money. I think DLC is a much better way of doing business.
I agree it's a better way of doing business, but then I also add the caveat, I don't care if it's good for business because I'm not getting any of that money. I'm spending that money. So it's like the backlash between like just the consumer and the people making the game. It's just a case of, yes, they should be making money because otherwise they're not going to get anything else, but it's still not in any way helpful for the actual gamers. They're just constantly having to buy more and more stuff on top of the game they've already spent a considerable amount of money on.
I think the dirty connotation comes in from, you're not purchasing a complete game. And you know what I mean? Like, back in the day, you just unlocked characters and you bought a complete game for $50 or whatever. And now it's like, yeah, pay $60 for the standard game, but pay $120 for everything. And that's where it gets a little cheap to me. But I understand it. I think it's just the way things have evolved.
I
As
think
for
that
the
like the good reason for this being the whole like, well, you got this thing missing from this game and this thing missing from that game. If you add stuff to it that's good enough, then people will play this and they'll end up feeling like it's worthwhile. Because I know that a lot of people were complaining about Sword and Shield not having a lot of things that a lot of the other games do have, like the post game being uneventful. And if this is kind of like the reason why they didn't have that in the other one is because they wanted to make it part of the DLC, then that's kind of shitty to be like, well, we're going to take things out of what a normal game would be because we want to charge you for it. But at the same time, it's kind of one of those like consumerism things. If you take something away that people are used to and you sell it back to them and they think it's okay, then going forward, you're never going to put that in again. You know? I think for the betterment of the people that are playing Pokemon, and I haven't bought a game in so many years, I feel like people almost have to, no matter what, complain that it still isn't good enough. Because what's the likelihood that the next Pokemon games are going to give you more for less? They're going to tease this as being like, well, all right, they were okay with that, so let's take a little bit more out of that and add a little bit more into another DLC thing for the next set of games. And pretty soon you whittle away the way that you would with any other type of business, and that's why you get like, cable networks where it's like, well, we're going to add you another couple nickels and a couple dimes here and there, and we're going to take a couple channels away, but a little change here and there, you're not going to complain. And then soon enough, 2 years go by and you're like, holy fuck, I'm paying an extra $100 and I'm getting less, you know?
I kind of understand that, but personally, maybe I'm the only person in the world that plays Pokemon that thinks this way. I don't buy Pokemon to get a load of new features. I buy Pokemon to play the exact same game as I played 20 odd
Yeah.
years ago, just with new characters.
No, I pretty much agree with that. To me, I think actually a lot of the gimmicks that they do are stupid.
Yeah.
Like, I don't like Mega Evolution. It sounds dumb to me, and it's like, why would they evolve a fourth time but not really evolve? And this Z moves thing was stupid, and
yeah, every year they've tried to put like a slightly new gimmick, and sometimes it works and sticks around for a while. Sometimes it's just a one-off thing, like the Pokemon contest they used to do in certain generations and things like that. They're just things that just come and go. Like now you've got the Dynamaxing and you've got the raid battles, and some of those are fun and they're interesting to explore, but I don't know whether they will stick around long term. But at the end of the day, I just want to play a Pokemon game. And it has enough of the core elements to being a good Pokemon game for me to want to just stick around and play it. And as long as it has that, then I don't really mind what other little frills they put into it. Some of them have occasionally. I can't even say like they've ever really ruined the game as well, because none of them are really kind of core major features. You can kind of avoid them if you want to.
I feel like with anything, if you can imagine that it's going to return, it's probably a feature that's good that really actually changes the game. And then some of the other ones, that are flashy gimmicks that are hollow, kind of the way that some other things are, like the Liv Morgan thing. But like, look at Gen 2. You got the whole adding held items into the mix. You got the what's the coin purse or whatever system where like your mom's character can hold the money for you. You got the call feature, you got the night and day, like the baby Pokemon with like the breeding. So the breeding stuff, they carried that along. The night and day thing they kind of did here and there. They played around with some of those things, and some of those people seem to just be like, yeah, just have this every time. Like, people like the idea of Pokemon following them around. So just do that every time, and you're not going to upset anybody. But I don't think that anybody is going to be like, oh, the Z moves didn't return. That's going to completely change everything, and I'm not going to like these games anymore. That's a flashy gimmick for one thing. And now the next one, whether it's, Gen 9, or Gen 9's the next one going to be, right? This is Gen 8. think so.
Yeah.
I think so.
So whatever they call it, Pokemon Up and Down, I don't know. It'll be like, oh, so for this one, we got rid of the Dynamax thing or whatever. This time around, it's going to be that they're all wearing hats or something. And people will be like, the new hat feature is the best one. It's just, I don't know. And they'll have new hat DLCs. That's what it'll be. But I don't know about these actually, the DLC things themselves, like the Isle thing or whatever. To me, it seems a little strange. Like, I don't know why we got like new Reggies. One of them's electric and one of them's like dragon, I think. So I get that they're like the golems and stuff, and it's like this one's like made out of rock and this one's made out of ice. And why would you have like Reggie Dragon?
I kind of go with, if they're not going to make another game for 2 or 3 years, the DLC is perfectly fine. It's a good way to grow the game and just make it a more long-term investment. Whereas like the yearly 2K releases, it's like, I hate that you want to have me spend, $90 a year on relatively the same WWE game, and you're just adding, hey, look, we re-added Bobby Lashley, and you got to pay, $30 to play with Lashley or to have him in your universe mode. That's shitty because you're doing yearly releases of the same thing. But if Pokemon's not going to do that, if they're not going to have a game for a while, DLC is great.
Don't get me started on the 2K thing. I think that's just ridiculous. To get the new Madden every single year, get the new WWE 2K.
See, those games I think should utilize DLC to just make one game at least every other year, if not every 3 to 5 years. Because really, it's just football. You can just add a new player with new stats via DLC. Why do you need to create a new release?
Because otherwise they wouldn't make money, and so they wouldn't be able to run the games.
But I think Rockstar, with what they've done with GTA, can dispute that.
Well, I guess if you're charging them every time for the DLC, but you would essentially just be charging them the same price for it anyway, so it doesn't really change too much other than the fact that you just have to take one game off your system and add a new one instead.
Yeah, it's good and bad.
Second question here from Guest 5. Why do you think weight class-based wrestling never really worked in American wrestling like it has somewhere such as Japan? I feel like it's more of the spectacle here. Like, you get, say, Rey Mysterio versus Big Show. If you did weight classes, that wouldn't really happen. Whereas in America, and you want to do these kind of like the underdog story and David versus Goliath type things, it's easier if you don't have the weight classes. But maybe I'm just completely oblivious to how the weight classes work in like New Japan and stuff.
I think fundamentally the reason why it hasn't worked in most wrestling as opposed to boxing or UFC or other divisions where you do have weight classes is the premise that the world champion is the biggest belt that you should be going for. And it's not a world heavyweight championship. It's just a world championship in most promotions. So like the WWE Championship has no weight class attached to it. So you kind of assume that people like, I don't know, a Daniel Bryan or a Rey Mysterio or Kofi Kingston break through the quote unquote glass ceiling to capture a title, which is kind of would be deemed out of their weight class, even though it's not because there's no weight class attached to it. But it's an idea that I don't know why more promotions don't try and do this, try and stand out and be different, of like trying to make it so that all of your titles are quote unquote world championships, but just have different weight classes attached to them.
Yeah, because I mean, in like MMA and stuff, you can have like the welterweight title.
Yeah,
be
Conor
the
McGregor is the
headliner.
biggest. Conor McGregor is the biggest thing in UFC. He's not the heavyweight champion.
Right.
He was I think he was
Bantamweight?
No, middleweight, I think. Either middleweight or welterweight, something like that. He was that championship level. And yeah, he's the biggest deal. But yeah, so you could do something like that in wrestling where you basically say, okay, you can only fight for our world heavyweight championship if you're between this weight, you're over this weight. But then we have a world middleweight championship and a world cruiserweight championship, and then they can all like trade whichever feud is the biggest is the, I don't know, the top of the billing for whatever show it is. But the issue is that a lot of people, even though they claim about like, oh, we don't want to see all these big jacked up guys fight each other and stuff like that because that's the Vince McMahon vision and we want to be a bit more diverse. Realistically, people actually just want to see big guys beating the shit out of each other. They just deny it to themselves.
But it also limits you because then if you have like the middleweight and the heavyweight and all that, then you can't have a crossover without it not making a whole lot of sense.
No, I disagree. I think you can build it as a really big attraction.
You can have them feud. You can have them have feuds with each other. They just don't trade belts. They're just battling for kind of like a supremacy of, oh, okay, so I'm the heavyweight champion and you're the middleweight champion, and we've got an issue with each other. We're just going to fight out to see who's better. And you can make it a bit more spectacle. Like if the middleweight champion wins, the middleweight champion becomes a bit more of a bigger deal, just for a little bit, because there's always going to be the perception that the world heavyweight champion is the biggest and your biggest star. So you need to. I think if a promotion is to do this effectively, they just need to try and dispel that myth pretty quickly. Just like, oh, we don't have a quote unquote mid card title. We have loads of different world champions. And they just fight in different classes.
Yeah, how did he do this over New Japan, where like they do have the different weights, but it doesn't really matter, right? It's the type of thing, kind of like, well, you know, we'll have the cruiserweight title in WWE, but at the same time, Tony Nese is going to be fighting on Raw and fighting anybody as if he wasn't a cruiserweight separate.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, I kind of see where Guest 5 is coming from in terms of like saying that it's worked in somewhere like Japan. It doesn't really work in Japan because the heavyweight championship is still the biggest deal. The IWGP heavyweight championship is still the biggest deal, and the junior heavyweight championship is seen as like, yeah, it's still a bigger deal than the cruiserweight championship is in WWE. But it's still a secondary title. Let's say they're never ever going to headline a really big one of their shows with the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship. So that's just the way it works there.
That's why it's seen as such a big deal that Ospreay is, you know, oh good, he's going to move up. He's going to be a heavyweight guy now because you can't be a junior and be the biggest guy.
Yeah. And that's the just the definitive issue with this is that in order to actually get a weight class based system to work, you have to just not so much divide them all up completely, but you can still have crossover matches in order to try and mix things up and keep things interesting. But you have to present every single champion as they are the biggest deal in this company. Not so much at the same time, because one of them will probably be a bigger star than the other one. Like UFC, Conor McGregor's the biggest deal. Before that, Brock Lesnar was the biggest deal, and Ronda Rousey was the biggest deal, that type of thing. So you're always going to have someone who's a bigger star than anyone else, but there has to be, like, just a chance that a smaller guy is going to be a much bigger deal than your heavyweight champion every now and again. Just have them as the main eventer for a few shows in a row instead of the heavyweight champion always closing out the show. I personally just don't think it will work, just because I feel like in America the big attractions are the bigger guys facing each other for the world title, and that's kind of the way it's always been.
I think that's about all we got with that topic, right? I don't think that there's anything else. Let's move on to another one. Why does Vince hate tag team wrestling? If it's done right like NXT, it's amazing. Totally agree. Tag team wrestling is great when done right, and it's not done right all that well in WWE, all that often, I should say, because of the fact that they just keep using tag team wrestling as filler. It's like, well, let's give the belt to these two guys that are single stars because the helps, like, you know, the Braun Strowman and Seth Rollins thing. Let's get rid of the tag team division so that we can further tell the story of one night of these two people feuding with each other. And then we'll move it on to these people, then we'll just ignore it for a while and stuff. And it sucks because there are a lot of great tag teams that can put on just as good, if not better matches than what's featured outside of that. And I get the idea that, like, you want to bank on a single star more than a tag team because tag teams, you're investing in more people and it's just a different dynamic. But at the same time, it can't just be all the same thing. So look at the New Day. The New Day, super popular tag team, and they even had a means to get a world champion out of the mix. And they still were a tag team. They didn't break up. They didn't have to do the whole split angle. It can be done so well, rather easily. It's just that his preference is to not do that for whatever reason. But we're talking about somebody who also says that he doesn't like tournaments for some reason, or can't use the word hospital. It's,
Well, I like that these two questions were back to back because, in a lot of ways, it's the same answer. You know, the World Heavyweight Championship is always going to be the singular focus. So, tag teams are stupid because, I'm never going to have a tag team main event my show. And I think this was cemented by guys like Michaels and Edge breaking out and becoming such big single stars that it then became, all right, I can have a tag team, but I'm always looking for the Shawn Michaels of the team to break out.
Yeah, I think Rob's kind of just nailed it on the head there. It's just that Vince doesn't see tag team wrestling as main event. He doesn't seem, which is bizarre because so many territories in the past, like the Von Erichs and the Freebirds, their entire promotion was built off the back of tag team wrestling. But Vince has never seen a tag team as the main event draw. And when it has been, the very, very rare occasions, it's been a tag team like the Mega Powers, which are two like essential main event singles guys coming together as a tag team. And yeah, so I don't think he'd ever headline a show with the Dudley Boys or the Hardy Boys ever being like the top guys in the entire promotion, because he'll always place the single stars above them.
you know, it's
The
weird
ironic
though.
thing is his favorite act growing up was the Graham Brothers. So he liked tag teams. I
Well,
don't
it's
know where that went
also,
wrong.
he clearly likes tag team wrestling because every single show is like, this is a 6-man tag and an 8-man tag and whatever, constantly. So it's like he
Because it's the
likes,
easiest way to get as many single stars
yeah.
in a match.
And you would think
Well,
that somebody who likes to have tag team wrestling be predominantly featured on the product would understand after a while that there's a different dynamic to tag team wrestling that can make things even better than that, you know?
I just don't feel like he sees it, like I said, doesn't see it at a main event level. He still likes it. I don't think it has anything to do with the quality of the matches. He just doesn't feel like tag teams are big stars. And if they are a big star, then one of them is a bigger star than the other one, and he can be a main eventer.
It's a shame. I think we can all agree that we would have different philosophies if we were in charge, right?
Oh, absolutely. But then
Yeah,
again, we
tag
probably
team
all have
wrestling.
we'd have different philosophies from each other, probably.
But that's good. People are individuals.
Yeah, I mean, you got a committee of people and they can toss a couple different ideas out there instead of one voice being like, nope, that's how it is. Every interviewer has to stare off into nothingness because that's how I want every interview to be from now until the end of time. Like, which apparently other people do now. Like Mandy Rose can just like stare off and kind of thing too. Let's go to Rachel's question. Prior to the women's evolution, why weren't WWE's female talents allowed to compete in the likes of Royal Rumble matches, Elimination Chamber, Hell in a Cell, etc., etc.? A couple different reasons. We just talked about the idea that, like, if somebody in charge doesn't think that that's what sells and all that, then it doesn't happen. Like, we didn't really have intergender wrestling as much in WWE ever. It still is not really a thing, so they wouldn't throw a whole lot of people into those other matches. China being an exception to the rule, Karma being in a Royal Rumble, etc. But, like, it's not like how the Tessa Blanchard thing is, where she's fighting Sami Callihan and then she's in the same mix. Beth Phoenix wasn't fighting in TLC matches against the men. And when it comes to just giving, Natalia versus Charlotte, a match in like a Hell in a Cell or whatever it is. I don't think that they had a lot of the talent to be able to pull that off. And they also didn't want to really go in that direction. It was just it's a different era. We've talked about it before. It's the model era. All they care about is TNA.
We've seen it sporadically, like in 2002, Trish and Victoria had a Street Fighter 2. Victoria and Lita had a cage match on Raw. This comes down to within the last decade or so, when they moved to the butterfly belt, it became really, okay, we're Barbie dolls. Because we can't even be TNA anymore. We're just like straight up Barbies who, I'm going to fight you because you called me fat. Even though I'm clearly not fat and I look stunning. It's like, that's why those things weren't happening. And every now and again, you'd get the Divas of Doom versus Lay Cool in a tables match, but it had to be a pink table, an extra girly. Like, they shove these things down your throat of, like, these specific stereotypes, and we would not be talking about any of this, to bring it back to another question, if it wasn't for MMA and the success of Ronda Rousey. Mm-hmm. That allowed you to immediately go, women can be badasses too, and now we have Charlotte Flair, who is top 3 in the industry.
Yeah, again, I think pretty much all been covered. Fundamentally, women weren't seen as a draw as wrestlers. They were seen as a draw as personalities and eye candy. So they didn't have any need to compete in Royal Rumble matches or Elimination Chambers or ladder matches or Hell in a Cells, because those were the matches that you put wrestlers in.
And you put the women in the bra and panties matches, and that was their equivalent of their gimmick matches, because obviously you didn't see that for the men.
Yeah, you put them in bra and panties matches, or you put them in lingerie battle royals, or you put them on the arms
chocolate pudding fight.
Yeah, you put them in the arms of celebrity guest hosts for Raw GMs and stuff like that. And yeah, there was a very clear, a very definitive role for them, and it wasn't in the ring for the most part, even though they had to be in the ring every now and again in order to make sure they weren't seen as completely sexist, even though they were completely sexist at that point.
And also, they were very nondescript. Like, they were all just it was the one big group of divas, and sometimes they were just there to clap at the Hall of Fame. It was really bad.
Yeah, it's kind of like, hey, we got them in a 3-minute match. They're wrestling. They're not just the Nitro girls. And then it would be like, okay, well, it's a 3-minute match, and it was predominantly them doing the same kind of stuff. Like, it's a completely different era, and thankfully we moved past that. We got to a point where now the athletes can actually be athletes, and
except for Liv Morgan and Lana, who are having 3-minute matches on Raw.
Yeah, but hey, it gets YouTube views. It's that kind of thing.
I would just like to point something out here. Why do people not get upset when Mojo Rawley has a 3-minute match on Raw?
I do, but I do. I don't know about anybody else.
I don't get upset because I don't like Mojo Rawley.
Well, no, but I just feel like we need to get to a point where you can have both. You can have the main event women that go out there and they do like 10, 15, 20-minute matches and they're good. And you have to have ones which just are there as a comedy or a sideshow act that do 3 to 5-minute matches. It's more about the story and the promos. I feel like there's room for both.
Yeah, and I think it's more of an idea that people are just so used to that being a thing that anytime you go back to that, people think that it's a step back. And
I can understand that, yeah.
We're not far enough removed from it that they can kind of not like get the joke, because it's not a joke, but it's, the kind of thing where it's like the more time passes between a horrible thing, the better it is for jokes to be able to happen. You separate that and you can play around with stuff a little bit more, and it doesn't bother people as much. And 5 years from now, they'll be able to do 3-minute matches and people won't have much of an issue, because now you don't hear as much of a complaint as you would have maybe 2 years ago, I think. But it also depends on the whole story. I mean, we talked about the Lana and Liv Morgan thing. I think that the bigger problem here is the story itself, more so than that they didn't go on an extra 5 minutes, because the match itself wasn't worth going on 10 minutes. But hey, that's one person's opinion. Real quick, we're going to plug the merchandise shops just for the hell of it. TeePublic and Redbubble. If you want to pick up any kind of t-shirts or any kind of different other types of design merchandise kind of scenarios, then go ahead and check that out. There's Smark Out Moment, but there's also Fanboys Anonymous and A Mango Tees. So if you are interested in picking up a shirt that's got anything about, maybe I'll do like a Obama 2 Days Big thing or something like that. I don't know. Any design ideas, of course, send them my way and I'll see what I can do. But yeah, go ahead and browse that if you got the spare change and you want to pick anything up. Let's move on to a question from Howard. If Bruce Lee were alive today and he became a wrestling superstar, which brand would he land on and who would he feud with? For one, I could see him wrestling Nakamura. I think clarification would need to happen first. Is he Bruce Lee, the megastar, going into wrestling, or is he Bruce Lee, a no-name who wants to be a wrestler as opposed to an actor and all the other kind of things that he was? Because that makes a big difference, I think. If he is already established, I think they put him a little bit through the NXT system and move him on to SmackDown because he's like a sport-based kind of guy. And if not, then I think he goes straight Performance Center, NXT, the way that like a football player would now.
Yeah. If it's the latter, where he's just I'm Bruce Lee and I'm athletics, so I'm going into wrestling, I think he stays primarily on NXT. If it's I'm the megastar Bruce Lee, he's fighting Brock Lesnar at WrestleMania.
Yeah, I think, like I say, I think you go in the Performance Center and he wouldn't be quote unquote Bruce Lee because he would go to the Performance Center. They teach him how to work in American style, and he'd throw a few kicks here and there, but he'd basically lose a lot of that aspect of his character. If he is like the Bruce Lee that's been in the movies and thought, I want to just give WWE a try for a little while, then yeah, I'd have thought seeing him wrestling people like Nakamura would make sense. Or I'm trying to think of people. Maybe you could fought Ernest the Cat Miller when he was in WCW because he had a karate background as well.
Managed by Sonny Ono.
Which one?
Bruce Lee.
Yeah. Well, was Bruce Lee was he a good promo? Do you think he would have been a good promo?
I think so.
Would he just go, ha! Like that kind of thing that he used to do? It's just kind of
he could talk.
Yeah, I mean, but that like a catchphrase, just kind of having that be like the one and only thing that you're like, he did the thing, kind of.
I would have thought to see if he could have fought and in his prime Rob Van Dam, that would have been cool.
Would you rather Rob Van Dam or Kung Fu Naki?
Definitely Rob Van Dam. I'm not even going to joke about that.
Because that they would do that. That they'd have to have like karate, kung fu, same fucking thing. You guys fight because I don't know the fucking difference between taekwondo and oh god, what was the name of that system, the exercise system? Taibo. I don't know that kind of crap. So I'm sure that a lot of other people don't know either, and they would just be like, that's a karate type thing. This one knows judo, and this one knows Krav Maga, and this one, you're all karate people because karate is just a general term. A lot of dumb people like myself just lump everything into. So I could see them doing that kind of stuff. But what would his theme be? Would it be like the theme from Bruce Lee story movie? That's a damn good theme. I don't know if that would work well as like a wrestling entrance though.
I assume he would just get the theme from one of his movies. Just use that for it. I don't know which one is more of his famous, what one of his most famous movies is, but probably just take one from there if he has the rights to it at the very least.
Maybe he'd wear the gear that they kind of took in and the Kill Bill route, and then Becky is sort of doing that. Like he'd be wearing the yellow kind of stuff.
I could see that.
Kind of fun.
I want to see him fight Matt Riddle now, even though I know he can't, obviously, for many reasons. But yeah, him against Matt Riddle would have been cool.
Well, would that have happened, or would Matt Riddle have tweeted something about it ahead of time, and then Bruce Lee would have said, "We're never going to work together"?
And then he'd say, "Bro,
yeah,
bro, come on."
go to Michael P's question. With Tessa Blanchard winning the Impact World title, is there any female wrestler in WWE that you would be okay with holding the WWE Championship one day? Nope. And that's not a slight on the women's division. In fact, I look at it this way. I think that the men's and women's divisions should be separate because I like the distinction of them being equals. And I feel like if somebody in the women's division is going for the men's title, it's because they're perpetuating this idea that that means more. And it's like, wow, okay, well, now she won the Impact Championship, so she's the real champion. And the women's one, well, that's still number 2. I want it to be equal. So I want the fact that, like, Becky Lynch won those titles and main evented WrestleMania was more important than the WWE and the Universal Championship. And I like that. I don't think that you should just be like, okay, well, then they're going to have to win that to be the real champion. So keep them separate in my mind.
While I agree with everything you just said, that's not a lot of fun in terms of answering the question. So I'll say Charlotte Flair because she's good enough to at least hang on the mic with most of the male roster.
I can't be that fun with this one because no, there should never be a female wrestler that holds the WWE Championship. Just echo what Tony would say. Just it's not about positioning, like putting a woman with the WWE Championship to present her as like the best. To present her as the best, give her the top women's championship and present her as a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like this Tessa Blanchard thing is really rubbing me up the wrong way. And it's not because Tessa Blanchard's not a big deal, because she is, despite some of the stuff that's been said about her and everything like that. She's still, as a wrestler, a big deal. It's just that you've got her and you've now got Taya, who's the women's champion. And it's like, well, what's the point, really? Intergender wrestling, I'm totally fine if a promotion wants to do intergender wrestling.
I think we lost Callum again.
Yeah.
Callum's been having some issues here and there with his internet connection, so he might pop in and out.
I'll echo, like I said, I agree 100% with what you said. I was trying to give the person asking the question a fun answer because I guess they would want to know who could possibly hold the WWE title. But I agree. I think we worked so hard. I say we as if I did anything. They worked so hard.
You're at the picket lines, to
get the women's division. It's finally equal, and it's not enough.
Right.
Well, Tessa should be the world champion. Why? Why can't you make the Knockouts title the title that main events every single pay-per-view because you're that damn good?
Yeah. I mean, if they are legitimately equal, then there should be no need to feel like you need to step up from anything because there is nowhere from up. You're already at the top.
Which is exactly why, as confusing as it is, I agree with the NXT Championship name thing because they're equals. I think that when being announced on the same card, you should at least say the NXT Women's Champion. But if you're just referring to her, I think it's perfectly fine to call her the NXT Champion.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to do it like that, then that's a distinction that I'm okay with. Because to me, at that point, again, we talked about this before a little bit, but to kind of echo the things that I had said before, I think if you want to say both of them are the NXT Champion, cool. But you still have to say one of them's the NXT Men's Champion and the other one's the NXT Women's Champion instead of they're both the NXT Champion. Because at that point, if I'm typing out NXT Championship match, blah, 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 and then the next match is NXT Championship match, people will be like, wait, didn't they just do the NXT Championship? Kind of the same as like if we had 2 Universal Champions or 2 whatever, the distinction being this one's the Raw Women's Championship and this one's the SmackDown Women's Championship, or the Raw Tag Team Championship and the SmackDown, instead of just they're both the WWE Tag Team Championship. They used to have the WWE Tag Team titles and the World Tag Team titles. I thought it was kind of stupid, but you need some kind of a distinction just because it's like you can't have 2 of the exact same thing and not have it get confusing. But if you have the NXT Men's Championship and the NXT Women's Championship, awesome. Like, they're both the NXT Championship. as they should be, instead of being, well, this one's the champion of all of NXT, and this one's the only one for the women because that one is a subdivision kind of a thing. Like, I get that kind of scenario. And I just kind of feel like if anybody feels the need to move up to the men's title, they're either subconsciously or inadvertently saying that the women's title is below it, and that's not fair.
I agree.
That being
Yeah,
said,
totally
if
agree.
any of the women did win the WWE Championship at any point for whatever reason that I completely disagree with and all that stuff, I mean, it's going to be Charlotte.
Yeah, it would be Charlotte.
Like, the only person other than Charlotte that it would be Becky. And between the two, they're going to go with Charlotte because Charlotte is the one that they prioritize. Becky is like, they knew that they needed to go with Becky for WrestleMania, but that was not at all the plan. We know for a fact it was Charlotte versus Ronda. That was their game plan. And the only reason why they went in a different direction is because shit happens. Things change, people catch on, and they would be completely stupid to just ignore that and say, no, we have our plan, we're doing it, and you guys need to suck it up and deal with it, just to be stubborn. It doesn't work that way. But we are talking about Charlotte, and here's where something kind of confusing comes into the mix. Emilio's questions, and this is by no fault for Emilio. This is how, and this is something we need to address. So Emilio has 4 questions. I'm going to read the 4 questions out. Actually, 3 of them work in together. I'm going to read 3 and the 4th one's separate. And then we're going to kind of address all 3 in one shot. So Emilio had sent questions in well over a week ago before the Royal Rumble. And 3 of his questions are, do you guys think that Charlotte Flair is on her way to missing her first WrestleMania since coming to the main roster, or at least won't be in a prominent match? There was a rumor that NXT is going to be involved with WrestleMania. How do you guys think NXT will be involved, and what would you like to see NXT do? And the 3rd question being, linking the first 2 questions, do you guys think that Charlotte and Rhea Ripley will fight for the NXT Women's Championship, and if that would be a good match for WrestleMania? So he had sent these questions in before the Royal Rumble, and now Charlotte won the Royal Rumble, so we already have our answer for one of them. The idea of, is she going to miss WrestleMania or be in a non-prominent match? Absolutely not. She's the Royal Rumble winner. She is going to fight for a championship unless there's some big convoluted way for her to get around doing something or whatever, including the idea that maybe, and I don't think that this is a high possibility, but there is a chance she does fight Rhea Ripley and it happens at TakeOver instead of Mania. I do not think that's happening, though.
Not happening. If she fights Ripley, it's at Mania.
It's like a 5% chance of that happening. Maybe not even 5%. In that scenario, though, that would be the only way I could see her missing WrestleMania. And that's just because they would want TakeOver to be a bigger deal. But this is something that is going to happen potentially with us doing the quarterly mailbags instead of, January, February, March, etc. Is if anybody asks any questions that are time-based and then things change, then it's going to be outdated. So the fact that we're not going to have a February mailbag or a March mailbag means that if anybody were to send in a mailbag question like tomorrow that would say, who do you think is going to win the Elimination Chamber? By the time we get around to doing the Q2 mailbag in April, that's already going to be gone. And we won't have to address it because there's nothing to address. Well, I think that the person who won is the one who won, So, again, I want to reiterate, if you have time-based things that you want to get our answers to, for the most part, if you send the questions on a tweet or something like that, we'll probably just address them anyway. Or, drop a comment on YouTube or something, just kind of in the mix, especially if it is time-based where we're not going to get a chance to do that in the meantime. But if you do want to make sure that it's like a 3-person panel type of scenario on the podcast and not just a comment or anything like that, the mailbag priority tier on Patreon, you can ask those questions and more, and then we will do the dark cast or anything and kind of answer those questions before they become outdated. So we do know the answer for some of these things, and we have talked a little bit about this, but I think it's gotten even more confirmed at this point. Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley. Have you Either of you changed your opinions about that, or you're more supportive, less supportive? Anything about that?
I still think best match on the show, but it doesn't make any sense because yeah, you're trying to establish that NXT isn't the developmental brand, but does that mean are you going to start treating NXT like it's a bigger deal than Raw or SmackDown? I highly doubt it.
I mean, do you have to treat it like it's a bigger deal, or just treat it as equal? It's not saying like just
Are they
because
even going to
Charlotte's
do
going to
that?
challenge
Though?
Rhea Ripley for the women's title, that it means that NXT is bigger than Raw or SmackDown. It just means that she wants to fight Rhea Ripley rather than Becky Lynch or Bayley. So it's more like a shot in the arm for Rhea as opposed to a slight on both the Raw and SmackDown Women's Championships. I feel like this is only beneficial to everything, because if you are going to go, I mean, realistically, I think I said in the Mega Maniacs, and I'll just repeat it here. If you were going to go with Charlotte versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship anyway, and you were also going to go with Shayna versus Becky Lynch for the Raw Women's Championship, you should have just had Shayna win the Rumble. You shouldn't have just gone this convoluted way just because you wanted a surprise of having Charlotte win, because everyone thought that Shayna Baszler was going to win the Rumble.
See,
More so, I think it's them wanting to say, for the first time ever, the Royal Rumble winner is challenging the NXT champion.
They get a surprise too out of it because Charlotte pops up on NXT or at Takeover, and that gives them a story for the next couple weeks to be like, oh, this happened, and Charlotte attacked Rhea Ripley, and I'd argue it also makes it seem more important because she used the Royal Rumble shot for that specifically. Like, I don't remember if it was one of us or if it was somebody else in the Mega Maniacs, but bringing up the idea of like, if Baszler had won and then we established a number one contender for Bayley through the Elimination Chamber, and then Charlotte went after Rhea Ripley, it would kind of seem like this is her last chance and it's just for the sake of doing it. This makes it seem like, no, I specifically want that. Kind of like, I mean, this is sort of an equivalent, but it's not 100%. I've argued for a long time that I think that the Money in the Bank should be for any title. And even though you would think that people would fight for the world titles, I would argue that if somebody had something going on with the Intercontinental or the United States title and they challenged for that title with the Money in the Bank, people would think that it meant more. The championship, I mean. Instead of being like, oh, he just wasted that on the Intercontinental title. Be like, oh, wow, he wanted the Intercontinental title. That must mean something. I mean, I'm not too familiar with the inner workings of New Japan and stuff, but you guys have mentioned so many different times about Naito and the Intercontinental title and that he doesn't care about that, but then that becomes a story. So when he wins that, it's like there's like something more attached to it, you know? You add something more into the mix, I think it upgrades the belt. And Charlotte using the Royal Rumble win to challenge for the NXT Championship means that that is actually on par.
What does that mean for TakeOver?
That's confusing because then at that point, if Rhea Ripley defends the NXT Championship like the night before WrestleMania, nobody's going to be invested because they know that Rhea Ripley's not dropping that belt. So
Well, then
maybe
I wouldn't have her do that. I would have the WWE Women's Tag Team Championship defending at Takeover.
that would be a good way to do that because I don't think that that's going to be on the card for Mania.
No, because you're going to have 3 women's title matches supposedly now on WrestleMania if this is what happens.
And the Battle
So
Royal.
you're probably not going to have, and you're not going to find room for it. And that puts a better spotlight on the women's tag team titles, in my opinion, because even though it's not going to feature on WrestleMania, it's going to have a longer match and probably a better match because it's going to be featured on NXT TakeOver in a prominent position rather than being given 5 minutes on the WrestleMania card.
Or you use the NXT UK Women's Championship at TakeOver.
That could also be a possibility.
You know, I mean, that doesn't have to be just the NXT Women's Championship. They do have NXT UK. And
Well, fuck it, you just do like Candice LeRae versus the Io Shirai again, because that's a great match. So why not?
You could do that. You could do some kind of a tag team scenario, like Rhea Ripley and somebody against Charlotte and somebody. Or, I mean, they've done it in the past, like Rhea Ripley and Charlotte tag up against 2 people. You know, if they want to get them on the card.
I think arguably the most interesting, and I don't want to go like so future ahead because there's still a lot of things to be decided. This match isn't even booked yet. But consider if it is Charlotte Flair versus Rhea Ripley for the NXT Women's Championship. If Charlotte wins, she's in NXT now.
Right.
Like arguably, like one of, if not the biggest women's wrestler you have, is an NXT superstar again, and that immediately draws eyes to NXT, which should do at the very least.
And we know that when people from the main roster go to the NXT roster, that helps with the ratings, helped with Survivor Series. So if Charlotte pops up on NXT anytime over the next couple of months, that could help pop the rating a little bit.
But will this be the first of like some other big main roster moves to the NXT roster? Like, because I presume at the next draft, if we're starting to establish that NXT is not so much like better than the other brands, but is closer, a bit more on par than the other two, then surely they're involved in the draft. And so we might see superstars move between all the different brands.
I think that Finn Balor said that already.
Yeah.
But I don't think that, again, this match hasn't even been booked yet and all that other kind of stuff, and everything can change. But I think that Rhea Ripley wins at Mania, and they don't do the whole Charlotte moving down to not moving
It's
down.
just
but
a bigger launch for Ripley.
Yeah, and then I think after if they do, in fact, do a superstar shakeup after Mania, which I'm assuming that they will do because it seems like at that point they would want to reset everything, then yeah, I do think that we get some people move around a little bit, but I don't think Charlotte would be one of them. I think that you look at some of the people like the Keith Lees and Bianca Belair. I think, like, for instance, like Belair goes up to Raw. She'll just be a part of Raw. She'll be on the same touring brand as her husband, Montez Ford, unless, of course, they get moved over to SmackDown or something like that. Then she goes there. But maybe Ruby Riott goes back down to NXT, and maybe somebody like Io Shirai comes to the main roster, or well, they're all main roster now. It's going to be hard to get out of that mentality. But I think that this sets a little bit of an example that now, from this point on, we look at the Royal Rumble and we're like, hey, somebody could win and challenge the NXT Men's Champion.
Yeah. And that's, to me, is the biggest thing if this actually does end up going down. The precedent that you're setting here now means everybody really has to be on guard. They only did this back when they had ECW. They only did this the first year with Taker, where he teased possibly challenging Lashley, but they never did that again.
Yeah, at that point on, it was just like, well, ECW doesn't matter.
Yeah, it was like the ECW champion is in the Rumble rather than being somebody who can, be challenged in the main event of Mania. It's going to be really fun to watch, but of the three options, if we take what we have now, whether it's Charlotte Becky again, Charlotte Bayley again, or Charlotte Rhea, I'm going Rhea because it's fresh and it's the most exciting option.
Now, if NXT does do something else, that's another part of Emilio's question. How do you think that they'll incorporate that in Mania? I think it's pretty much just this match and then participants in the 2 Battle Royals.
I think the NXT title gets defended as well.
I think that that's safe for TakeOver.
Yeah, I think they'll put the NXT Championship on TakeOver, but I wouldn't be surprised if they did some sort of Undisputed Era 4-on-4 match with the team from the main roster. Just to get them on there because they're a big deal.
Well, let's
any
see.
desire to see any particular team?
Well, there's not really a 4-man team that exists at the moment, but you could do some sort of combination of. I'm trying to think. I guess it all depends because I feel like some of their plans have been screwed up because AJ Styles probably missed WrestleMania. But yeah, so we'll have to just wait and see. If they want to put Undisputed Era on there, they'll find 4 people for them to fight.
4 random single stars.
Well, yeah, it'll probably just be, I don't know, the Viking Raiders, Ricochet, and Aleister Black or something.
Vince is finally going to get his Titus in the New Day pitch.
I don't think that they're going to incorporate anything else like that. I think if they do put other stuff in the mix, it's just going to be too complicated of a card, because if we do, I mean, let's kind of unpack the way that WrestleMania seems like it's going right now. We know that we're getting McIntyre or Lesnar. It seems like we're getting Charlotte Rhea. Then we got the two other women's title matches, probably Becky and Shayna, Bailey and Banks, I guess. I don't really know. The women's battle royal, the Andre battle royal. We got to do Roman versus Wyatt, Edge versus Orton. That's already 8 matches. And that hasn't factored in the Intercontinental title, the United States title, either the Raw, SmackDown, or women's tag team titles, and then any other feuds. I mean, we're not going to get like the Cruiserweight title anymore because that's NXT. We're not going to get a match dedicated to the 24/7 title, but we could have plenty of other feuds, because it's like, what does Seth Rollins do, and what does
Kevin Owens,
Kevin
Samoa
Owens and
Joe.
Samoa Joe against each other? Are they going to do something separate, or we get Daniel Bryan versus Sheamus, that kind of thing? Like,
Oh
so
God.
we're already working into the past a dozen matches type things, and I don't think that there's room for Ciampa versus Gargano or something. Well, maybe I'm wrong. The other question from Emilio was, what do you think about the Kabuki Warriors new theme? I personally think it sounds like something out of an action movie, but that's still better than mashing 2 separate themes together. To be perfectly honest, I can't remember their theme off the top of my head, but I do remember thinking that it was an upgrade from their shitty idea of a mashup, because mashups are great. I love mashups. I actually specifically, if I find a new song that I like, I will Google on YouTube. I will YouTube the the song name and mashup to try to find remixes that people have made. You know, one of my favorite songs to listen to is a mashup of 2 songs that I like a whole lot. Oh my god, I'm blanking on the name. Battle Without Honor or Humanity from Kill Bill, mixed with In the Air Tonight, Phil Collins song. It works so freaking well. It's so good. And when you can mash up different songs, I got a Wild Wild West mashup with Donkey Kong Country. Doesn't seem like it would work out all that well, and it's amazing. But you look on YouTube and you see these people that label things as mashup, and all they're doing is playing a portion of a song and then playing a portion of another one, and it just intercuts. And that's what they were doing. That sucks. You give them their own theme, and at least it seems like you tried. So I like that better.
I agree.
Yeah,
I mean, yeah, the mashup thing was stupid. At least this is something unique for the team.
Yeah, the mashup was just lazily throwing their 2 themes together, not actually trying to. It wasn't really a mashup. It was just, okay, we start playing Asuka's theme, and then we start playing Kairi's theme, and then we start playing Asuka's theme. It's what was a lazy approach to it. Their current theme, I don't think it's like super memorable. I'm still a bit annoyed that they're not using a Baby Metal song as their entrance theme.
What's
Dude,
Baby
they
Metal?
totally fucking should be using a Baby Metal song. They've used it before on NXT. I'm sure you've heard it.
Yeah,
Is that
they've
the one
used
that you came out with, the Poppy?
No, that's Poppy.
no, they've used it as a when they had that match with Tegan Nox and Dakota Kai.
Was it
NXT.
Karate?
Yeah, it was Karate by Baby Metal.
Yeah, they should get the rights to a Baby Metal song.
Because they're, as far as I'm aware, they're both fans of Baby Metal as well. I've definitely seen Kairi Sane as cosplayed as them before. So
That's awesome.
So they're both fans of it. So I thought, okay, they've got to buy the rights to this song and they've got to do it. But no, they decided to come up with their own one instead, which is worse, but at least it's better than what they had previously. So as long as they're upgrading it, I can't complain too much.
Maybe it isn't actually a theme that they've made. I mean, they do license out production themes. Like I've said before that Rich Holland's theme, I really like his theme. Turns out that that's just a production theme. It's not something that they created for him. And they actually used it recently for this kind of like look into Casey Catanzaro's return. So it was weird because it's like now I'm used to listening to this theme and having Rich Holland come out and they're playing it with Casey Catanzaro. It's a completely different scenario. But maybe that's what the Kabuki Warriors theme is right now. I haven't looked into it to double check if it's like, ATB Productions or whatever it is. But if that's the case, maybe they are sitting on some kind of a baby metal song that they'll debut for TakeOver or Mania. Something to look forward to, maybe.
It'd be pretty cool.
Because you got to assume if our scenario plays out the way that we think, Kabuki Warriors will be the tag team champions going into that scenario. I don't know who they would fight. You know, who would they fight on NXT? What tag teams do we have for them?
Candice and Casey Canzaro. They're not a tag team. I mean, there's no tag team.
I think
Casey
regularly teams with
Caden Carter.
Yeah.
But Caden's not really a big deal.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring up the roster because let's go down this rabbit hole.
You'll just throw 3 tag teams together from the NXT people they have there, because unless they decide to put another like NXT women's singles match on there, and that's like a number 1 contenders match for whoever wins the NXT Championship match at WrestleMania, then they're all kind of only going to be able to get involved in this match. So you'll get like, I don't know, Bianca Belair and Io Shirai if she's healthy, and Candice and Casey, or Candice and Tegan Knox.
Yeah, they could do Candice and Tegan. That makes sense. I mean, it would have made more sense if it was Dakota, but they're feuding, so they can't really do that.
And they already had that match.
Yeah. Chelsea and Deanna are not quite a pair right now anymore, and they're heels anyway. So you'd have to turn Kabuki Warriors babyface, or just do a heel versus heel thing, and they tend not to do that.
Well, I imagine it's going to be like I assume it's going to be a fatal 4-way or triple threat match.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that way they get like, Alexa and Nikki, or Fire and Desire, or something like that. Yeah, because like Mia
Gabert's gone from NXT UK, right?
Yeah, she's out of there.
Yeah, because you can't do like Ginny and her.
And so you could probably do like Tony Storm and Piper Niven.
That'd be good.
Yeah, they could do something like that. I mean, they'll figure it out if that's the case.
NXT women's roster is like the best women's roster in wrestling right now. So I'm sure they'll be able to find more than enough people that can make this match good. Especially if Kairi Sane and Asuka are involved as well. That's
that big push for Born and Bougie.
Okay, there are some bad people in there.
Yeah, you don't want to see Tainara team up with
Kavita Devi.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that sounds so bad.
Let's go to Peter's sets of questions. These are the last ones that we're going to be doing here. Let's see. I read that Vince McMahon has dyslexia. Do you think that that's why we have script changes every week? No, I think that is more of just him being genuinely indecisive and kind of wanting, some people, they do this and it's like a micromanaging type of thing. Some people will want to change things just for the fact that they had changed it. And that means that they were doing their job as a supervisor. And that's not the right way to go about doing things, but it happens in every type of workplace. It happens with every type of manager type of position. You could have like an assistant manager stocking shelves, and they'll be like, I think that you should put this on the right side of the other product. And it's like, oh, come on, it doesn't matter. It's the same shelf. But you could also have people like in a Vince McMahon scenario where, it's middle of the day on Monday and they decide, I'm going to change this on Monday Night Raw because that proves that I'm in power type of thing. I think that that's more of it, or him just being like, nope, change my mind, rather than any kind of like dyslexia type of thing.
Yeah. We've never seen Vince in a scenario with numbers and letters and getting things backwards, as opposed to him just being a very indecisive and surly human being.
I don't think Vince is particularly indecisive in that he just changes his mind. He changes his mind a lot, but I feel like it's a weird thing where I don't feel he's indecisive. I think he's very decisive about being indecisive.
He's very decisive in that moment and then changes it. Yeah, as opposed to, I don't know what to do. Yeah, that's a better way to put it.
Yeah, I don't think he would describe himself as indecisive, even though he changes his mind a lot. And I think it's a mixture of that and also the fact that he's 74 years old and he suffered many chair shots to the head. So he probably forgets what the story he's talking about when he's finished. Like, he could be reading the script and then the second he takes his eyes off it, he's forgotten what he's just read. I can imagine that being the case as well.
Yeah.
Have you guys heard anything about this? Because I had never heard about the idea that he might have dyslexia.
I think I
Honestly,
vaguely.
I don't look up Vince in a personal way, so I don't know much about his life outside of what I've seen on TV.
I think I vaguely heard him talk about it, maybe in like an interview that he gave to, like in the early 2000s or whatever.
Was that also in that Playboy interview?
I can't recall it. I was too much. I was too focused on stuff in the crushed leaves in people's vaginas to really pay attention to the dyslexia stuff.
Those should not be related at the very least. That's one thing.
Check out 2001 Wrestling Odyssey.
Yeah. Yeah, they go down a deep dive on that thing. But maybe
He definitely does.
God. I did not see that coming.
He didn't either.
Oh, jeez. Maybe at the very least, if there is something to this, maybe that would be the way that they format graphics, or they have like the text on the screen. Maybe that would have something to do with it. Like if he's picking, I like that layout better. It shows up better, but I don't think it would be anything with like the stories at the very least. Yeah, again, who the fuck knows?
Yeah, the booking might seem ass backwards sometimes, but I don't think it's because Vince is dyslexic.
So, question number 2, did you hear the David Benoit interview? What do you think of Vicky Guerrero pushing for a Benoit Hall of Fame induction? Is Nancy as banned as Chris, or can she be a Legacy Award Hall of Famer one day? So, first things first, the David Benoit interview. I know that Rob did some transcripts of it, and
Sure did.
I checked out the transcripts, but I did not listen to the interview itself. Callum, did you listen to it?
It's a journey.
Oh yeah. Oh,
It's a journey, guys.
Is it
was
like
that
significant?
was an awkward 40 minutes that I've ever listened to, potentially. He is totally devoid of charisma. He is very, very. He seems. I'm more scared of him than I would be scared of Benoit nowadays, and that's saying something really. His mind seems really warped, and I don't want to say so because he seems like he's a nice guy, but this hero worship thing he's got going on with his dad, considering what his dad did, is a little bit bizarre.
Nailed it.
Yeah, it
Like,
definitely seems strange.
It's not so much about the thing like he wants to be a wrestler, and that's totally fine. Like he shouldn't be castigated or turned away just because his surname is Benoit.
He doesn't want to be a wrestler. He wants to be his dad.
Yeah, he wants to be. Yeah, he wants to be Chris Benoit. He wants to wrestle under the name Chris Benoit. He wants to wrestle in Chris Benoit's tights. He wants to use his entrance music. He wants to essentially, I don't know,
erase
everything that he did in this final 48 hours of his life. And I know, obviously people will paint Benoit. Benoit was more than the 48 hours that ended his life. That's the most significant thing that he ever did in his life. And so it needs to be, you can't just erase it or pretend that never happened, or pretend that, he was a different person for that point in time. He still did it. And then so it's why all these calls for Benoit to go in the Hall of Fame is just so ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
yes, he was a great wrestler. He killed 2 people and himself. Don't put him in a place where he can be celebrated.
It's weird. This is what I'll say about that. We have out and out confirmation about the heinous things Michael Jackson did. Nobody is saying stop calling Michael Jackson the greatest of all time.
Well, you can. I don't think there's the thing where you can't call Benoit a great wrestler. I've watched Benoit's matches since the incident happened. I don't have a problem watching them. I don't have a problem admitting the fact that he was a great wrestler. But I don't feel like he should be celebrated either. I don't feel. I would be perfectly happy if tons of wrestling fans growing up never knew who Chris Benoit was.
Well, this is potentially a sore subject, but one of the big stories going on this week is Kobe Bryant. Now, I am not super familiar with Kobe Bryant and all that stuff, and obviously there's so much to this whole helicopter tragedy that is just like absolutely horrendous. And of course, the big part that people keep focusing on the most is Kobe Bryant himself. Yet there's so many other people who had died in that, and they're just not getting the media attention because they're not the big superstar. Yet Kobe Bryant does have stuff in his past that is problematic. And people are talking about the idea of like retiring his number and all this other kind of stuff. And I'm not, an authority on this kind of subject to be able to say like, I'll bring up this idea because this is like what they did in the past with this person and all these other kind of sports things where I just don't know, that kind of stuff. But if these other allegations in the past, or if they're all true or something like that, then you can't just swipe that stuff under the rug. And if Vicky Guerrero, for instance, is saying like Chris Benoit should be in the Hall of Fame, I kind of figure it this way. I know that some people just want to live in the past and they don't want to let go of that hero worship. And it's a friend of theirs, Vicky Guerrero was close with Chris Benoit. Like they were, Eddie and Chris were close. But you can't look at something and say the friend that you had before all that stuff, that matters more than what horrible, horrible thing that they did. It's not like I think we can all agree the worst thing that you can do is kill somebody, kind of.
Yeah.
There's not much more worse than killing another person.
Well, there's all worse things. It's killing your wife and your son.
Yeah, it's like there's different levels to different things and all that, and obviously there's like you kill somebody in self-defense. It's not as bad as if there's a million other things like crimes and stuff.
Out.
You kidnap somebody and you hold them hostage for 20 years, and it's like, yeah, you didn't kill them, but you did that, and it's horrible abuse and all this other kind of terrible shit. But like, if he would have done something like killed himself, nobody would be having this discussion. He would have,
he'd be in the Hall of Fame already.
He'd be in the Hall of Fame because he committed suicide and it'd be horrible. And yeah, but he killed two innocent people, one of them being his son. You cannot just go, yeah, but fucking hell of a match at WrestleMania 20, right? Like, no, it doesn't work that way.
I know people might bring up like the Jimmy Snuka thing because everyone knows now it's pretty definitive. Jimmy Snuka killed his girlfriend all those years ago. I think it's kind of different for a guy who was already put in the Hall of Fame, and it's like they seem like it'd be just an issue taking him out of it, and because there's never been it was never definitively said in court that he was found guilty of this because he was just too old and he died soon afterwards anyway. And so they've kind of used that as an excuse to make sure they don't have to take him out and they can still use footage of him and all that other stuff. With Benoit, to put him in after that atrocity, would just be like you're just inviting so much bad publicity onto you for no reason.
He can never go in.
And no, he can never go in. And Nancy should go in.
Yes.
To the Hall of Fame.
Well, here's where that gets confusing. The question Peter asks is Nancy as banned as Chris? Absolutely not. I can't imagine that they're in any scenario that they would ban the idea of putting Nancy Benoit in. But I don't know if there's really anything worth using as a foundation for her to go in and to stir up all this controversy as well.
You put her in quietly as a legacy award.
I think she had a distinguished enough career in WCW to potentially merit it. And frankly, you don't need to have much of a career to merit a WWE Hall of Fame induction.
Drew Carey.
So I feel like if she does go in, it would just be as a legacy award, so it would just be kind of swept under the rug, and people might get a little bit, concerned about it for a couple of weeks, but then it would just go away because I think people just need to realize that Nancy's just a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And you don't put her in under the name Nancy Benoit for one.
You put her in as woman.
Yeah, put her in as woman. And then that's fine. People, obviously wrestling fans who know it at a deeper level will know that's Nancy Benoit, but I'm pretty sure the vast majority of them wouldn't care because she did have a pretty, not a long, but a significant career in wrestling WCW as a valet for people like Ric Flair and Kevin Sullivan. But so they would make peace with that and move on.
If I were in charge, I probably would be too hesitant to do that because I wouldn't want to stir things up.
No, because the one thing to me, it's the easiest out of all time. If somebody calls you out on it, I'm Triple H on Twitter, and I say she earned her place. She was a victim. We want to honor her. The end.
Yeah, that's the sort of
They can
one
only
you
look
put in
good.
that might lead to some controversy, but the controversy is being caused by people that are in the wrong.
Yeah, but
Whereas
it's
the
still.
Benoit thing,
I mean, people cause bullshit over nothing, and this would kind of trigger some of those people. And given the option of being like, well, do we just induct a bunch of other people instead and avoid that entirely? Or do we invite that conversation and then have to kind of battle those people? I think it's more often than not, I'd be like, all right, well, at the very least, let's push that until next year. And then it would just be like pushed until next year over and over and over and over again.
I'm surprised that Vicky Guerrero genuinely thinks he should go in the Hall of Fame.
I think it's very different when you were like, I guess when you knew him personally.
Jericho knew him personally. Jericho understands.
Yeah, I
Different
think
people,
Jericho's
different insights, you know?
Yeah, and Jericho's like smart enough to know that he's still probably will go back to WWE at some point. He doesn't want to stir the pot too much, whereas Vicky's probably done and dusted. Like she might come back for like the occasional guest spot or whatever, but she pretty much just wants to say what it is. And also, and like obviously Benoit and Jericho were close, but nobody was closer to Benoit than Eddie Guerrero. So I can understand why Vicky would take that approach and why David Benoit was taking that approach as well, because they were he was family essentially to them.
You see, I don't feel like David is in the wrong ricochet because that was his dad, and he just wants to remember the good times. I just think it's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I'm worried about. Yeah, I'd be worried about him getting involved in it just because. I mean, he's.
It's the type of thing that, like, if I were a therapist, I would want to talk to him and be like,
yeah,
there needs to be a separation between this. You should not be. You can hero worship the good side of your dad and the fond memories that you have, but you can't just act like you can pick up the ball and run from it. Like, we passed the baton over and nothing happened. It's a completely different scenario than Ted DiBiase Jr. holding the $1 million title.
Okay, Brian Pillman Jr., that's not his name. But, that's okay that he wants to be Brian Pillman Jr. Knowing the connotation that your dad's name carries, why the fuck do you want to be Chris Benoit?
What is Brian Pillman Jr.'s name? I just assumed that it was.
It is not. I think it might be something very similar to Brian, but
Byron.
It's not. I want to say Brian, honestly.
Huh. I just feel like it's just so. It's just how much he wants to be his dad is probably the most worrying aspect of it. Because like I say, if he just wanted to be if he just wanted to be a wrestler, if he just wanted to be a wrestler, and he just wanted to because he loves wrestling and his father was a wrestler and he wants to not just carry on his legacy but carve out his own legacy, and if he wanted to use the name Benoit or anything like that, then that's totally fine. It's just how much he wants to essentially be the one to wipe the slate clean for his dad, rather than just be his own man.
I have his boots, I have his tights, or tights made to look like his. I'm talking to people about using the theme song. It's just like, no, you have to see the red flag. You have to know that this is a bad idea.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's very scary. I'll leave it at that.
And the fact of the matter is, he's late 20s now. As far as I'm concerned, as far as have gathered any information on it or anything along those lines, he's only really been involved in Lance Storm's training academy, and he didn't even pass that.
He did 1 week.
Yeah, he's said that he's just about getting in shape, and he hasn't really done any independent dates or anything like that. So he's not going to be. It's unlikely he's going to be anything special. Very, very unlikely. And the only reason he would get booked in anywhere significant is because of his last name.
Right.
So leave that as you will. He's not going to erase what Chris Benoit did as much as he wishes that he could.
Let's move on. We got a lot of heavy questions.
Yeah.
Let's go to one of the final ones from Peter. They say the rules are WWE and Universal title for Grand Slam, but Booker and Christian used the World Heavyweight Championship. Dolph is a former World Heavyweight Champion too, and Dolph is crowned as a Triple Crown, but not a Grand Slam winner. Why is Dolph Ziggler not a Grand Slam champion, but Booker T and Christian are? P.S. Chris Benoit is a triple, but not Grand Slam. It's missing two. Actually, I'm going to lump this in with the other one from Peter because we're going to kind of talk about the same sort of things. He says, who do you think can be a Triple Crown or Grand Slam champion? And he's got a couple different ideas of, or not ideas, a couple names that they only need one championships and different things to get in the mix there. So I guess this is a good way to start is, do you guys agree or disagree with me on this? It makes no sense at all that the United States title and the Intercontinental aren't equivalents.
They are.
They are now.
They are now officially, because a couple months ago they weren't.
Well, this is where WWE is like deliberately kind of obtuse without this whole thing. So the original format of the Grand Slam Championship is you have to have one of the WWE or World Heavyweight Championships, need to have one set of Tag Team Championships, need to be the Intercontinental Champion, and then you need to be either the European Champion or the Hardcore Champion as like a tertiary title. And now under the revised format, you need to be a WWE or Universal Champion, a Raw or SmackDown Tag Team Champion, an Intercontinental Champion, or a United States Champion.
Because according to Wikipedia right now, Triple Crown only constitutes World Title, Tag Title, and Intercontinental, not United States.
It's very much like this is just WWE being very pernickety about the rules in these regards. I think they kind of just see the United States, even though it is a secondary title, as like that's the replacement for the European Championship, and so it's not quite on the same level as the Intercontinental title.
Right now, as they're separate brands, they're forced to be equivalents.
Yeah, I just feel like there's no reason why Dolph Ziggler shouldn't be considered a Grand Slam champion, but it's just the issue with the fact that he crosses between both the original format and the revised format. So he doesn't count because he has things from both sides as opposed to all from one side that he needs.
See, because to me, I think that the Triple Crown should be either the World Heavyweight Championship, the Universal Championship, or the WWE Championship. Like, all three of those can constitute a world title. And then World Tag Team title, WWE Tag Team title, Raw Tag Team title, SmackDown Tag Team title. Just, you gotta, one of those, because it's one of them kind of, the World Tag Team title faded away and the WWE one mixed in, and that's all fucking confusing. But you have to have a world title, you have to have a tag title, and you have to have either Intercontinental or United States. It makes no sense to me that it's like, let's just the Intercontinental. And then when it gets to Grand Slam, then it gets confusing, because then at that point, what is the fourth one? Because if you have that set up as the Triple Crown tier, you sort of, the Intercontinental and the United States count in the same, and then what would be the tertiary championship? And that, or not tertiary, because that's the other thing. What would be the quaternary championship? That's where the confusion comes in, and I guess that's why they keep making it that the United States is that fourth title. But it's stupid, because it's like, you could be a 10-time United States champion and you're filling the same role as the Intercontinental Championship, and then because John Cena only won the United States and not the Intercontinental, he's not a Triple Crown winner? That's stupid.
I think he's a Triple Crown. I don't think he's a Grand Slam.
No, he's not Triple Crown because he's never won the IC title.
Yeah, only the Intercontinental counts for Triple Crown for some reason.
Wow. Whatever. I'm confused.
That's where it gets weird, because they don't have... well, actually, they do. Now, they have the 24/7 title. Technically speaking, that should be their other title. it should be the Grand Slam being a world title. Either you previously won the World Heavyweight Championship, or you won the current WWE Championship or Universal. You either won a previous tag team title, or you are a current Raw, SmackDown Tag Team Championship previous winner, Intercontinental or United States, and then the 24/7 should kind of be, because the format changes. I mean, it used to be, you can say that they're a former Grand Slam champion when they won the European, or that they won the Hardcore. It should be that the 24/7 is that now, and the Intercontinental in the United States should be parallels. It makes no sense to me that, like, for instance, I'm looking at his suggestions here. I mean, John Cena is one of them. Undertaker is another. He's not a Triple Crown winner because he never won the Intercontinental, but he never won the United States either. So that's okay to me because he didn't win either of them.
Yeah, I think it's just a case of WWE just being too rigid with their sets of rules, where they should be a lot more fluid with this.
So, like Dolph, for instance, he is an Intercontinental Champion, a United States Champion, a World Heavyweight Champion, and a Tag Team Champion.
Yep.
He should be a Grand Slam champion.
If he'd have won the WWE Championship and not the World Heavyweight Championship, he would be considered a Grand Slam champion. That's the only distinction. Is the fact that the World Heavyweight Championship is part of the previous era. It's just a huge distinction about the fact that the World Heavyweight Championship is part of the original established Grand Slam format, and the United States is part of the new one. But they were both running concurrently with each other at one point. So there are certain people that won that championship and the United States Championship. So they should also be considered Grand Slam holders, but they're not, just because WWE is just being too fixed with their lineup of championships.
So he has tossed out some of the people. I don't know if this is all of the ones that are just like one or so belt away, but some of the ones that he's curious, do we think that these people will end up winning Triple Crown or Grand Slam status? Roderick Strong is a North American champion for NXT and a tag team champion. So if he wins the NXT championship, he's the Triple Crown.
But isn't he technically just straight up an NXT Grand Slam?
Well, I guess at that point you would need to win the Cruiserweight. Right?
And he can
Wouldn't that
technically
be the case?
win. He can technically win the Cruiserweight Championship. So yeah, but I feel like in NXT at the moment you're kind of just aiming for the Triple Crown at most. And yeah, him winning the NXT Championship, I mean, I would like to see it, but I don't know whether he's at that. I don't know whether he's perceived at that level.
I don't think he's winning it.
I would be surprised if he won it, but I would be happy if he won it, but I'd be surprised.
I kind of think he's fighting Adam soon, but we'll get to that later.
Ciampa would need to win the North American title. I don't think he's going down to that. So that's not happening. Becky would need to win a tag title and the NXT to be Grand Slam, tag team to be Triple Crown for WWE. I do think that Becky will win a tag title, but there's no reason to think that she would go and win an NXT championship.
Nah.
I would say, I mean, she won't win the NXT title unless they start doing this big definitive NXT's a big deal. She'll win the tag titles at some point. I don't know who with, but she'll win it.
It's Charlotte.
But that counts. I don't know if that counts like a Triple Crown thing. Just I assume that would be a Triple Crown if she won the tag titles.
Yeah, because right now the Grand Slam, even though it should include the NXT UK women's title, it doesn't. It's either, I guess it's either the NXT UK or the NXT women's championship. It's the same kind of thing, but there's no clarification behind that. But you need to win the Raw, the SmackDown, the women's tag titles, and the NXT title. That's Grand Slam, and the only one that's done that is Bayley.
Yeah.
I think that Sasha would only be one off, right? Sasha would only need to win the Raw. No, wait.
No, SmackDown. She only needs to be SmackDown Women's Champion. Yeah. He's got her on the list. Yeah. Yeah. He's got her on the list next to Charlotte.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, Sasha. I think she will win the SmackDown Women's title, so she'll get in there.
Mm-hmm. Charlotte will win the tag titles.
She'll win the tag titles, whether it's with Becky or somebody else. Like she's going to do everything. Charlotte will win everything at some point. Asuka would need to win the Raw Women's Championship.
That's not out of the realms of possibility.
I think that it could happen. It kind of depends on how much longer she wrestles, I think.
Bliss did it, right?
Bliss needs the NXT.
She's never been NXT champion, yeah.
Yeah, she needs the NXT to be Grand Slam, but she is Triple Crown.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, she might have been the first Triple Crown.
I think she was, yeah. Oh no, because Bayley's the first tag champion, so she must be the first.
That's true. Crown. That makes sense. Kyrie would need to win the 2 world titles, the Raw and SmackDown. That's a little harder of a task, I think.
I don't know. I don't think she'll be at the company that long to do that.
Yeah, I think that there's a chance if she sticks around long enough, there's a chance she wins one of them. I don't know if she would win both down the line. Kevin Owens would need a tag title. Yeah, that could happen.
He hasn't won a tag title yet?
Nope.
Oh.
You would think that he would have won it with like Sammy or something, but no.
Sammy or Jericho or something.
Huh. He might win it with Joe. Who knows?
You never know.
Styles would need the Intercontinental and the tag because he's a former United States champion, and there's that whole distinction that doesn't quite count the same. Tag, I think that's a little harder actually than the Intercontinental, oddly enough. And it all kind of depends on if they do the Freebird thing. Because if they want to, they could say that he was a former tag team champion as part of the OC. They never really clarified that.
He never defended the belt. He never defended the title.
But if they want to do some kind of bullshit, retroactive, retconning kind of thing, they could. The Intercontinental, it all depends on if he ends up being on the same brand. They could definitely give him that at some point.
Again, it also depends on how long, because he's running down his final contract now, so yeah.
But he's got 5 years.
Yeah, so he probably will, but nothing's really set in stone. I mean, Cena hasn't won an IC title yet, so.
And that's something that I think that in the future, if he is running out the rest of his career, whether it's 5 years, 10 years, whatever, I mean, he might change his mind. Or he might get injured and, not have that, unfortunately. It happens sometimes. But Styles has bounced around already. He's been the Intercontinental, at that level, United States champion. He's done that, and he's done that for a while. He's done the world title stuff for a while, and he's done just a regular guy for a while. And he is exactly the type of person I could see them being like, maybe a year from now or so, if he's not in the world title picture, that they'd be like, hey, can you make the Intercontinental title mean something for the next couple months? And that would be, Triple Crown right there. So definitely don't count that one out. Lashley and Nakamura would both need the world and the tag titles. I don't think it's happening for either of them.
Lashley needs all of them.
No, Lashley's a United States champion from his old time as a.
And he's Intercontinental.
He beat Finn Balor for it. He defended it at WrestleMania.
Yep.
Oh my God, that's awful.
Yeah, it's completely uneventful and forgettable, but he did it.
I'm totally thinking of his first run in the company, and I'm like, he didn't win the IC title.
No, he only won the US title there.
Nakamura, I think, could win a tag title, but he's not going to win the world. Lashley
could do it.
I don't think he'll be world champion.
Yeah, I think that they lost the chance. If he would have come in and they would have actually pushed him the way that we thought that he was going to be pushed, instead of I don't know, he'll feud with Sami Zayn over some cross-dressing sisters of his. I think that they lost it, and now
Jinder Mahal. There's always a chance.
It's true. Jinder Mahal's not anything away from this, is he?
He's 2 away. He needs the IC and he needs a tag.
Okay, yeah, I don't think that's happening. He could win the IC, maybe. I don't think he'll win the tag. Who would he tag up?
He's more likely to win. He's more likely to win the tag at some point, just because anybody can win the tag title.
Then again, we've gotten Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes as tag team champions, so yeah, they could just do Mojo Rawley and Jinder Mahal as tag team champions in 2022.
They could bring the Great Khali back for a one-off thing, and they can be tag team champions.
Drew and Big Show would need the world title and the United States title. Drew could win that world title. A
Not
big
Big
Biggie
Show,
and a Big
Big
Show.
E.
Yeah, Big Show's already
Big Show
won
is a Grand
everything.
Slam champion, yeah.
Yeah. Drew, I see a good chance of being both. Big E, I don't think so. I don't think he's getting that world title.
I'd be surprised. He seems like somebody who's kind of, the way that he's spoken about his potential retirement soon probably means that he won't be in the company for much longer than 5+ years, I imagine.
Right.
And I don't think he'll ever reach the world title, though. I think Kofi was kind of it for them. You missed Curtis Axel is also missing a world and a US championship.
Oh, yeah, that's not happening.
Yeah, that's right, because he was tag champion quite a few times.
And
Yeah,
Intercontinental.
Yeah.
Yeah, Curtis Axel's not winning that world title. It's just, sorry, guy.
Jinder Mahal, baby.
Yeah, all he has to do is just leave WWE, get really, really ripped, and then come back and win the world title. But
Not
both
out of the realm of possibility.
Drew and Jinder now. So
R-Truth, Cesaro, Matt Hardy, and Robert Roode would need to win the world and the Intercontinental. I think that world is out of the picture for all of them, unfortunately, even though I think that there's an argument to be made that pretty much any of them could have at some point won the world title. It's a little harder for R-Truth, but crazier things have happened. Jinder Mahal. Cesaro, of course, everybody's always talked for the longest time that he should have been pushed. It didn't happen. And I think that it's never going to happen now. Matt Hardy, he's well past that point where they would bother putting the world title on him. And Robert Roode, they seem like they're just like, no. So that sucks. But I do think that they can win those, Intercontinental titles and stuff. It's just a matter of where they find their place on the roster. But that world title thing screws the whole thing. They can't be Triple Crown if they don't win that. So nope.
Nope.
Shelton and Zack Ryder would be world champions. Nope, not happening with them, unfortunately.
No, not a chance.
Are we
Not
really
even
going to go
Jinder.
through the whole roster? Because there's a lot of people that are just never going to make it.
Well, these are the ones that are like one belt off that Peter was
Yeah, they're only
suggesting.
just one belt away. Yeah.
Yeah, but Ryder, the one belt is something Ryder's never going to get.
Yeah. Well, Cena and Sheamus just need the Intercontinental.
That
Although-
needs
will
to
get there.
happen.
I thought that Sheamus already did win it.
No, he's never won the Intercontinental title.
That's weird.
He was in that chamber for the Intercontinental title, but he didn't win it.
Huh.
Yeah, he was the last one eliminated by Ryback.
There's a very good chance that he is fighting for the Intercontinental title either as champion or challenger or something like that around Mania.
Can we stop perpetuating this idea of Sheamus versus Daniel Bryan?
Well, here's the thing with that. Do they go with the original plan that was rumored and speculated and reported and all that other kind of stuff that may or may not be true? That originally for Survivor Series, they were going to go with Daniel Bryan beating Shinsuke Nakamura, and it was going to be Bryan versus Styles and Strong. Or is Braun Strowman just going to win that title? And then we get like Braun versus King Corbin.
Why can't we have both?
Well, we can't have both because there would be two Intercontinental
Well,
champions.
no, I was going to say, why can't we have Strowman win the title for a month? But then you bring that up, and I don't want to see King Corbin against Braun Strowman for the IC title at Mania. Sorry.
I could see this being a direction. I still think that there's a good chance that we get Sheamus and Bryan, but I think that could be just a feud. Just happens. I think Strowman can win that Intercontinental title, and he might even win it like this week or something. I don't know. Maybe he'll win it at Elimination Chamber. And then we get Strowman versus Corbin at Mania, and I could see Sheamus being the guy to beat Strowman and win that Intercontinental title later this year.
Yeah, I think Sheamus will be Intercontinental champion sometime this year. Cena is unlikely.
I'm fully going with the idea that it's Bryan and Nakamura for the IC title at Mania.
What do you think, Callum? Do you think that they have more of a chance of putting Nakamura in that match, or if he's going to be at Battle Royal, like I think?
No, it's going to be Bryan against Sheamus. You're right.
Yeah, you know what? You guys need to learn about speaking positive things into existence. This is wrong.
Oh, we're just speaking positive things. We're positively sure it's going to be Sheamus. Look, maybe it's not going to be Bryan versus Sheamus. Maybe it's going to be Bryan versus Sheamus versus Strowman versus Corbin.
It may not be Bryan versus Sheamus. It might be Sheamus versus Bryan.
That's true.
So, yeah. That's a whole different dynamic.
Yeah, John Cena's not winning that Intercontinental title. He's just never wrestling ever.
Unless he really wants to win it. Unless
Well,
he
you
really
never
wants to
know.
win it to get a
Flair won
Grand
the
Slam. Because
title
then
at what, 56, 7, 8?
He's said recently that he doesn't want to win another world title, right?
Who?
Cena?
Cena, yeah.
Like
Did
he
he?
just doesn't want to beat Flair's record.
Well, I don't think it was that. He said that he wants to wrestle with the younger guys now. He doesn't want to. He wants to put guys over as opposed to win the world championship again. So maybe he could fight at the IC level. I mean, obviously, when he was putting, when you say like quote unquote putting more younger stars over, that was during the US Open Challenge. So maybe he could do the same thing with the Intercontinental title.
WrestleMania 37, Intercontinental Championship, Velveteen Dream versus John Cena. Book it.
That'd be great.
Be pretty cool.
But
Bray Wyatt and Undertaker. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, well, frankly, if Cena just comes in and says the only way I'm gonna work with you guys again is if you give me the Intercontinental title, they'll give him the Intercontinental title.
Yeah, that's true.
So
I'm just picturing now like that Max Landis thing with the wrestling isn't wrestling, that thing. And now I'm just picturing John Cena coming in and being like, hey, I'm one belt away from being Grand Slam. Give me the belt. Just gonna like, hey, what's championship? Like, you know. Taker and Bray Wyatt would need the IC and the US titles. Not happening.
no, I don't see that for either of them. Definitely not Taker, obviously, but yeah, I don't see that for Bray either. I don't think that works with his characters.
Nope. And the final two ones are Kane and Triple H with the new format United States titles. Not happening for
Never
either of them
happening.
either.
Nope.
Triple H was already a Grand Slam because he was a Grand Slam
From a previous
In the
section.
old
back
format,
in like
yeah.
2001. So
Yeah, he won the
Would
European title and got all that other stuff out of the way.
It's just the idea that they could be one of the few people to cross over both sides. Because I think Jeff Hardy and Chris Jericho are the only ones that cross both
Or
the old and the new format.
is Big Show?
No, Big Show
Actually,
won the
Big Show is
title.
on both of them. Yeah.
no, Big Show was European champion.
No, who's hardcore champion?
Hardcore. Yeah, Big Show.
Whatever.
So Big Show was he was definitely Grand Slam. I'm looking at this before he sealed the deal on the Grand Slam thing in 2009. It looks like when he won the tag team titles. Or no, he won the tag team titles in 1999. So 2012.
No, when he won the IC belt from Cody.
Yeah, 2012 when he won that. So he did that then. All the other people who were previous ones, Shawn Michaels is retired, Chris Jericho's in another company, Kurt Angle's retired, Eddie Guerrero passed away, Rob Van Dam's out of the mix, Booker T's done, Hardy is a part of that. So yeah, Hardy and Big Show and Jericho, they all did, and nobody else from the previous era has really a chance because
Well, actually, there's 5 that have done it over both ones, both Angle and Guerrero.
oh yeah, that's right, they
I've
did do
done it.
that. Yeah,
The only reason why I thought it was Jericho and Hardy, because Jericho and Hardy are the only ones that have won every single title under the original format, as well as like doing it for the opposite one as well.
yeah. So the only people that would have a chance, I mean, we can roll out Shawn Michaels. He's not doing that. Triple H, Kane. That's what we were just talking about. Rob Van Dam, Booker T, JBL, and Christian. Christian's done. JBL's not wrestling anymore. Rob Van Dam's out of the mix. Booker T's done. Triple H, Kane, Michaels, that kind of thing. Yeah, so it would have to be Triple H and Kane, unless we had some kind of miracle thing with like Christian coming back or Shawn
is
Michaels
actually quite
deciding to do this.
It is actually quite interesting reading this because, like, just looking through it, if Jeff Hardy was to somehow win the Universal Championship, then he would be the only wrestler to have held every single title under both the original and revised formats of the of this Grand Slam thing. Imagine that just Jeff Hardy is the one to accomplish that feat.
Hell,
Of
if
all
that
people.
was the case, if I were in the company and I knew that statistic, I'd be like, we need to get that 24/7 title on him right now. To just be like, it's a 10-second thing. He wins the title and then somebody pins him, but that way he just wins every single championship he could have possibly won in any scenario, you know?
Yeah, he just needs to hold that and the Universal, and then he just held every single title there is to win.
Then he goes down to NXT. And they're like, all right, lose a little weight, 205. Start winning the cruiserweight title. Go over when beat
He's already had
Walter.
the light
Like,
heavyweight title.
that's true. He's cruiserweight champion like that. Makes sense. Wow. Hell of a career, Jeff Hardy.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's our quote unquote speed round, I guess you could say, even though we took more than a different speed round thing. Who knows if we're going to get another Triple Crown or Grand Slam champion this year. I do think at the very least we're going to get one. I think that Sheamus winning that Intercontinental title is a very, very strong chance. And there's also a good chance that Charlotte, Becky, tag team scenario, we could do the tag team thing with Owens. Could happen. I think that's all the questions that we've got for this edition. Good 2-hour chunk of time. That's when we do the fact that these quarterly ones are going to be quarterly instead, we're going to try to answer some more questions and not make it like a 20-minute type of thing. So thank you to everybody who sent in their questions. And of course, if you did not get a chance to send in your questions and you want to have something taken advantage of with the quarter 2 mailbag, then if you send in questions now, I'll backlog them. And if it ends up being the type of thing that it's a time specific thing, take advantage of that mailbag priority. Just to make sure that you get those answered in time. And I already plugged the Patreon. I already plugged the merchandise shops. I already plugged the fact that Fanboys Anonymous is out there. But if you don't know what that is, then that's just my geek culture website. Movie reviews and all the other kind of stuff is where you'll find over there. So go ahead and check that out if you're interested in that. I know a lot of people on the wrestling side aren't necessarily, so I'm not surprised if that's the case. But if you are and you want to know my opinions about things like the Oscars when they go down, then you'll find that stuff there. And if you want to show more support for that, same thing for the merchandise shop, same thing for the Patreon. Follow all those accounts, subscribe to the YouTube channel, all that other kind of same stuff that you would do with the Smark Out Moment stuff. I think that that's pretty much all the plugs that I've got outside of when I round this back around, but I'm going to give these guys a chance to plug some other stuff as well. Rob? Unless Rob decides not to.
He's missed the shot. It's my turn, man.
I was muted, but Callum, go ahead because you weren't muted.
Well, there's not much to say from my mind anyway, but you can follow me on Twitter at Weekmeister14. Check out all the articles on smarkoutmoment.com, the power rankings in particular. To be fair, if you can only read one article at the moment on Smark Out Moment, then it's definitely mine that you should be reading. So, but check out all the other ones if you do find even a small pocket of time.
Yeah, and you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at DudeFelice. Check out Fightful, check out WrestleZone. Just keep supporting all the wrestling sites and enjoying wrestling. Tony?
Okie dokie. So, we do not have a game plan 100% for next week. And this is kind of one of the reasons why we wanted to have more options and not do the mailbag once a month, because we want to have more time to do some other kinds of things. And one of the ideas that I'm thinking that we might possibly do is this thing that we have been pitching around back and forth over the past couple of months, the idea that we want to tie into the 2020 year and start this new thing called Wrestling is 2020. And this doesn't have to be the same kind of format as what like 2001 was, where we do something once a month. Instead, it ended up morphing into this other kind of scenario where the idea is, if you look back in hindsight, what changes about your perception of something. So it's a little bit mixed of wrestling with the past, but with a slightly different variation of it. It's not quite just look what happened and then we talk about it. It's more so, hey, in hindsight, would you have done this or that? One of our examples that we have in mind is, in hindsight with the Chris Benoit situation, would you have given him the Royal Rumble win and the WrestleMania championship thing if you knew what would end up eventually happening? Or would you have gone with something else? And if you would have gone with something else, what would you have done instead? So we might do that just for the sake of just doing something different, starting things off. It's the beginning of the year still, and if we really like that and it works out, then we do more of them throughout the year. Or if you guys think that that's not really necessarily something that you want to see, and you want us to do like a Mount Rushmore or a Superstar Scores, or you really want us to harp on any kind of particular topics or something like that, tell us. Drop a comment below. The sooner the better, so we have more time to plan this out a little bit. And we're going to try to take those suggestions into account and see what we've got in store for next week and how we can kind of play around with some different things. And if we do, in fact, do Wrestling is 2020, I haven't even quite decided how we would do that. Are we going to do one topic and have that just be one thing? Or are we going to do multiple topics and just kind of talk for an hour and see what happens? I don't know. What would you like to see? It's kind of the ball's in your court a little bit. So that's something to keep in mind. We also could eventually do, if we have the time, which I don't know if we will this time around, Missed the Smark, which is another new thing that we are going to try to do at some point this year, which is that we look back on something that we did not actually see in the past. For instance, being, I have not seen Ready to Rumble, and I have not seen No Holds Barred, and I have not seen certain full WrestleManias, actually. I never sat down and watched WrestleMania 17 until we did the whole talk about it on 2001 A Wrestling Odyssey. So I never watched the entirety of WrestleMania 18. Maybe I should sit down, watch that, and we can do a whole thing about that. Or, something that Rob hasn't seen or something that Callum hasn't seen. One match or a whole pay-per-view. There's lots of varieties to that, as well as all the ones that we've done in the past. Maybe you guys are really just like, you guys haven't done Play the Game in a while. Whatever it is, any suggestions you have are going to be taken into account, and then that'll happen next week. Of course, the next thing you're going to be hearing from us is going to be the hot tags, because we're going to do that on Monday. And then we'll kind of, talk about like the Bella Twins pregnancy and whatever else we got to talk about that happens on that. But if you stay tuned, then you'll find out all the other kind of information along the way. Of course, if you are following us on Facebook and Twitter, then you'll get notifications when anything comes up. If you have that little bell checked off for YouTube, you'll get those email alerts. And if you are really looking forward to us doing something and we decide not to do that next week and you're disappointed, hey, that's what the Pick Your Poison tier is all about. So check out the Patreon and keep that in mind as well. But in the meantime, that's it for the mailbag for quarter one. Thank you for all the people who sent in your questions, and thank you for listening to this. We will see you next time. But for now, this has been another Smark Out Moment, and we're being counted out.